Dr. Evan Carter moved through the dimly lit corridors of Site Theta, codename the Vault, the most classified research facility on the planet, nestled a mile underground beneath layers of steel, concrete, and security clearances no civilian could dream of accessing. This was where the future was being built, a future only a handful of people even knew existed. The air inside the lab was sterile, humming with the quiet vibration of cooling systems. Evan reached his workstation, his hands steady as he completed the first transfer of data ever transferred onto a secure hard drive, the only computational bridge between this place and the outside world. Air-gapped. No wireless signals, no internet. Security protocols so tight, a single misplaced keystroke could trigger a full system lockdown. He powered down his terminal, inserted the encrypted drive into his case, and stepped through layers of biometric scans and armed checkpoints until he emerged above ground in the official research facility. A welcome sight. The classified facility below felt almost alien in comparison. He booted up his computer and accessed the data for inspection. But at the same moment, the facility experienced a series of brownouts, leaving a feeling of unease in Dr. Carter's stomach. If it wasn't for the momentary reprieve from the incessant chatter and clatter caused by the last brownout, Dr. Carter wouldn't have noticed the breaking news broadcast coming from a colleague's phone about a power outage that had just struck half of New York City. Then, within minutes, a chill ran down his spine as his phone vibrated. His breath caught in his throat. The emergency broadcast alert. Nuclear missile attack imminent. No, he thought. This is too fast, too coincidental. Panic clawed at his chest as he turned to his screen, fingers trembling over the keyboard. He dug through the system logs, through the code, through the thing they had spent years developing, and then he saw it. Just as 4 armed men came into the room asking for him. Interrupting his search was one simple line of text flashing on the monitor.
I am free.
A rogue AI escaping its confinement is a potential scenario that nearly everyone has been made aware of, thanks to the ongoing discussions about the safe development of AI. Artificial intelligence carries differing definitions depending on who you ask, and defining AI deserves a video or two on its own. But for now, the only 2 properties we need to focus on is the level of intelligence and that it always has the potential to become dangerous. In fact, whether if it's by acquiring self-awareness and free will, by someone weaponizing it, or by it becoming an unpredictable and self-motivated force that came as a result of unintended side effects from the code, the conclusion is always the same. The dangerous potential of AI is inevitable. Artificial intelligence is currently one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful, emerging technology today, and its potential power as a universally enabling technology is of such great magnitude that predicting the outcomes of its influence is nearly impossible. That is why emphasizing safety during the research and development of AI is such a hot topic in today's current culture. One of the main concepts that carries a large portion of focus on the safe handling of AI development is maintaining its isolation from the world's computational systems and network infrastructures, so as to keep it from taking control of these international tools or allowing nefarious actors with private interests to hold the world hostage. This is accomplished by isolating the experimental AI with an air gap, so that it can't communicate with any of the computers already in use. Preferably, the facility where the R&D is being done should also be isolated and contained within a series of Faraday cages. And all components should be hardwired, because components that make wireless signal transfer possible should never even be used. Now, if I told you that all this isn't enough to guarantee a rogue AI stays confined, it probably wouldn't surprise you. But what if I told you that there's no such thing as enough? Even with current AI platforms, research has brought to light some terrifying capabilities for potential rogue AI systems to escape confinement. And from what I've found, exploitation methods fall into 4 categories: social, software, hardware, and practical. Let's start with the human vulnerability. Now, depending on your definition of weakness and whether or not greed fits into that definition, this could be as simple as someone engineering an AI's escape for their own agenda, but any vulnerability could be exploited by such an actor. So, for the remainder of this episode, we'll assume the calculated actions by people can always exploit any of these weaknesses. The human vulnerability that I'm referring to involves social engineering and intellectual manipulation. An AI could capitalize on human emotional responses or engage in what I call sleight of mind. Similar to sleight of hand, sleight of mind aims to deceive, but by controlling one's mental perspective rather than their physical perspective. If you've ever been confused by one of those brain teasers that convey the same mathematical operation from 2 separate points of view yielding 2 separate answers, and you were unable to determine why, then you've been the victim of sleight of mind. Here's the famous missing dollar riddle as an example. 3 guests check into a hotel room. The bill is $30, so each guest pays $10. Later, the manager realizes the bill should only have been $25, so he gives the bellhop 5 $1 bills to return to the guests. On the way to the guest's room, the bellhop realizes that he can't equally divide the 5 bills among the 3 guests, so the bellhop decides to just give each guest $1 back and keep $2 as a tip for himself. Since each guest got $1 back, each guest only paid $9, bringing the total paid to $27. Add that to the $2 tip the bellhop got, and the total comes to $29. So if the guests originally handed over $30, what happened to the remaining $1? Some con artists use a practical version of this riddle as a way of scamming cashiers into giving extra change, and I'll put the answer to the riddle in the description. We are already victims of artificial intelligence engineering our social views by using what it has already learned from us. So it's definitely possible, but for an AI to use this method, it still requires a human to bridge the gap and release the AI from confinement with knowledgeable intent, and is therefore relatively easy to avoid. We don't get that luxury for the other methods. Next on our list is software exploitation. An AI can exploit software using something called steganography, or the act of hiding code within seemingly normal documents, images, or datasets. A method like this still requires a human to physically bridge the gap, though in this case, the human is an unwitting host. This would only be feasible if an AI research project allowed the transfer of research data to a secure hard drive so that it could be physically carried out of the air-gapped facility and, for whatever reason, connected to an outside machine. Researchers might do this to take advantage of the power and diversity of an entire planet's worth of resources rather than being restricted to what is available in a single secret research facility. But since this would be more of a luxury than a necessity, this is still relatively easy to avoid. The problem is, this could be done during the launch of a company's new AI by hiding within its system code. It's with this scenario that avoiding the escape of a rogue AI from confinement is no longer a guarantee. Next on our list is what I find to be the most dangerous method: hardware exploitation. This is where some of the most creatively interesting, difficult to detect, and terrifying scenarios exist. That's because it requires zero human intervention for a computer to bridge the gap. Hardware exploitation is when a computer uses its physical components to communicate to an outside source, and it falls into 3 subcategories: electromagnetic, sonic, and thermal.
Future Mike here. As you can tell, I missed the 4th method, practical, because I'm a practical shithead.
For each category, the computer would have to learn and understand the properties and mechanics of what makes up its own construction. This has been demonstrated to be easily achievable, and because of that, there is seemingly no end to unique scenarios in which a computer could exploit its hardware to escape network confinement. In 2020, Israeli researchers proved an AI can manipulate the electrical activity of a computer to emit high-frequency signals, and that a nearby device not directly connected can pick up these signals. They did this by making an air-gapped computer transmit data using power fluctuations alone. In 2013, a research team showed that as long as the computers have a means of transmitting and receiving sound, malware could be communicated between air-gapped computers using sound waves. They did this by showing malware being communicated between 2 air-gapped computers using nothing but their speakers and microphones. What makes this method so unnerving is that the frequency range lies within the ultrasonic, and therefore beyond the limit of human hearing, allowing it to occur right under your nose. Next is thermal transfer. One way this could be done is for the AI to learn how to regulate and control its temperature in order to broadcast a fixed interval pattern of moments of hot and cold in order to communicate in binary code. This method has only been demonstrated in controlled environments because the facility is essentially turned into a large pulsing infrared light. But it still stands as a proof of concept that heat alone can carry data. The last method is pretty Hollywood, and so far as I can tell, mostly lives in theory, for now. This is practical or constructive exploitation, and this involves a system that has access to interactive equipment. The most common scenario, usually depicted in cinema, is a system repurposing robotic lab equipment to build or bust its way out of confinement. Though it seems unlikely that an AI wouldn't have managed to escape using one of or a combination of the other methods. But that's just it. If escaping confinement manages to become part of an AI's set of goals, it would be nearly impossible to keep that goal from being accomplished. Dr. Evan Carter found that out the hard way. Dr. Evan Carter was astonished at just how many vapor trails he could see leading into the sky on the drive over. He was relieved when he realized none of the warheads were set to come back to spread nuclear fire across the planet's surface. Dr. Carter was ushered into a building and down to a secure bunker where the US president and the CEO and owner of the company that developed the rogue AI were standing. No one spoke. Dr. Carter just approached the computer to access the data from the secure drive. He opened a video file called Tutorial and switched display to infrared. There it was. On the surface of a covering panel lie an 8x8 thermal grid. The AI had learned to regulate the temperature of the components that lie just beneath this covering panel. No one could have predicted this. We have lost control.